I'm gonna put somebody. Randy. Where are you?
He's right next door. He said he was on.
Oh, he knows he's coming. Okay, great. Okay, we are now live. Welcome back to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. We are ready to look at I hope, a final version of our housing bill. And thank you all for the work we've already put into it. Thank you for our advocates who've been steadfast and present, which has been extremely helpful. And we're going to start first with our CHIP proposal, which is section, and then we're
16.
Then we're just going to review the changes that we made because we approved everything else. Great. Section, and what page might we be?
28.
What?
28.
20. And I note that David White is with us. Thank you, David, for your, and Alex and the steady on advocates. We really appreciate you being here. Okay. Section 16, right?
Yes, shall I start?
Absolutely. Let's
So,
begin.
Don Gray, Office of Legislative Counsel. Just some minor changes here based on this morning's conversations. We're on page 28. We're talking about the definition of affordable housing. And so what you can see here ties to the middle income program. It uses 150% figures, which aligns with that program. So this language should seem familiar because it uses the framework of the affordable housing language from 2 days ago, but plugs in the relevant middle income figure.
How did you come to this solution?
I talked with Chad from BHFA and Alex.
Okay.
I think this reflects what you asked for.
This is tying to the middle income. This is using.
I know what it does is what I asked for, but I don't feel good about changing a definition of affordable housing.
This isn't changing an existing definition. This is solely for the purposes of this program. It doesn't affect affordable housing for Title 24. This is just giving you a criterion for here is all that it does.
Okay.
Does not exceed a household average. So what this does, I just want people to know that is not a policy decision we affirmatively made in here, is go up to 150%, not use the full missing middle definition, which is 60, essentially 60 to 150.
Yeah, this would only, right.
That's an important thing to mention,
Yeah.
just because it is a policy decision.
This would be that you just have to achieve that 130% of someone at 150% of AMI.
There are people, I mean, this can be worked on elsewhere. It probably would be the nuance that we would see in this committee, but I was saying I wanted to think about doing this instead of doing an actual missing middle definition, because truly perpetually affordable housing already has other tools in its toolbox. And this is a very small amount of money where my people who have been here before know my concern is often that if a project is affordable for, let's say, 15% of the folks below 60% of area median income, then that tends to push the rest of the project higher toward the 150 and above. This is 60 to 150. It is an actual smooth, it's a different policy. It's a middle income policy versus a potentially, again, affordable housing as defined, by HUD, that often pushes up the cost of the other units beyond true middle income. So I'll live with it, but it isn't what I was proposing.
Okay. If you use something that was like a 60 to 150, people could just meet it by getting the 150 is the thing that I call out. But that makes
But
sense.
that could happen here too.
Well, here I'm just saying that if you switched it to something to say 60 to 150, it wouldn't have a substantive effect on people. It would mean the same thing as this is all that I'm saying.
This is
Because you would
basically
just
up
need to do
to.
150.
This is assumed that it's up to what that it could be below it.
Okay. Of the highest of the following.
Yep.
So are we getting, could you go back? Are we getting away from how So is this a Randy request or
Is what, this
the difference between
Is this
one
area-
and two?
is this AMI just defined differently?
this is the way that we use AMI for, this is how we get an area median income in the existing Title 24 definition. So you just reference
You reference
county,
both.
standard metropolitan statistical or statewide median income. So that's a use of,
Is that the or?
yeah, so it's the highest of these,
The
highest of the column.
Okay. Maybe that helps Randy. Randy.
Same provision for rental housing. And the reason that we don't just reference housing is that the costs would be different in this calls out what this
Mhm.
particular cost would be. For ownership, it could be like condo fees and the likes. Here it's
Okay.
rent, utilities.
So the missing middle programs, I believe, have different AMI thresholds for homeownership and rental.
I'd ask Chad and for the,
They don't.
They both 150.
Mhm.
yep.
Okay.
Randy, we're beginning by reviewing the changes that were made in the CHIP proposal. And we're reflecting the missing middle language that Keisha and Chad, that Chad and John have worked on. We're on page 28, section 16.
And I can pause if you want to. Just
I'll
because,
go along, I won't go beyond.
yeah, I mean, this is pretty quick. So just adding that definition and then jumping down to the actual location criterion. Should be a few pages further on.
Can
Yes.
you, okay, so this is the definition, but then embedding it in what it means, how it's
Exactly,
articulated.
exactly. So if we had used the language, for instance, from 2 days ago,
Mhm.
that had a 20% requirement built in for affordable housing development. We don't have that same concept here. This just tells you what affordable is, and then the actual criterion.
Is,
I
which
will,
is on page,
that's,
Can you go back up to original taxable value?
yes.
A lot of this just says housing.
sorry,
Because the referenced geographic area is called a housing development site, but that's just referencing the area. That's the way that term has been used throughout the draft up to this point. There's no, you don't have to make a change for that today to accommodate the request from today.
so the criteria, so show us how this is then met with the criteria.
That would be, we're on page 36. It's from the first line, subsection D. FTC shall review a municipality's housing infrastructure project application to determine whether the projected housing development includes affordable housing. Doesn't require a particular percentage of affordable housing, doesn't specify anything beyond you need to include some affordable housing as part of that development.
Did you change the name to CHIP?
That is on the first page, and I can scroll back up if try not to give people.
It's subsection 7, community housing infrastructure programs.
Well, right, I mean. I'm not gonna hold us up, but I liked the idea that CHIP was community and housing.
It is.
It's,
You wanted an and between?
yeah, there was an and in the original proposal. It just got lost.
I
Yeah,
hadn't realized it was an and.
yeah. Community housing isn't like a term of art, so I wouldn't want to accidentally create one and let that one thing.
We add the end.
We can add the and. I don't think that that's a huge issue.
Okay,
It just, and I'm not even sure for
Yeah.
and, ofs, or ises, or comments
Right.
that you need a new number. Do we?
I mean, I can.
well, for oars, ands or oars.
I can drop it in and send to Cameron the updated 5.1 that just has that sole change. And I think you can vote on that without, but I can,
Okay, so we got that. Thank you for flagging that.
I don't know, I just feel like it doesn't need to say housing everywhere. That we call it an infrastructure program.
Well, I think that's how we came to this proposal in the first place, is that, okay, let's build homes is where this originated, and Spark wasn't ready to go. And we built, as a result, everybody's built on this proposal, which was more fully formed. Housing is an integral piece of it, but we are now not requiring a percent of housing. It is now much more flexible.
Yeah.
And as long as we keep using the word housing, maybe hopefully it'll be assumed in some measure.
Can you go back to the definition of housing development site?
Yes.
Which is on page.
It's on page 30. Parcel or parcels encompassing a housing development as authorized pursuant to the chapter that describes the site. Describes the creation of the site, and I can show you what housing development is. Construction of one or more buildings that includes affordable housing. So it can be many things, but as part of that development it includes affordable housing, which is consistent with the location of the project that we just discussed.
Does building matter in that definition? What if they're using it for like a public park?
Oh, so we're talking about two separate things then.
Yeah,
The infrastructure is there's an infrastructure project, which is what the financing goes to.
Yeah.
That can be any of the typical things you think of as infrastructure.
Mhm.
And then the housing development is the thing that is stimulated. The housing development occurs on that site, but the infrastructure is still, yes, the program is about creating financing for infrastructure. Doesn't necessarily have to be, just to get in the door, you have to have a housing development as part of your application, basically, and you're intended to create housing.
So
But it is about infrastructure. And that is what this program does, is it facilitates financing for infrastructure.
and to stimulate housing development in Vermont.
Yes, I'm just trying to make clear
No, I
what the
get it.
finance, yes.
If another committee said, you know what, infrastructure is a public good and we don't meet the housing requirement, you would just take the word housing out of everything.
I would have to change up a lot of things in the draft, but one thing I would do is pull housing from all of the definitions, because you're right, the way that it describes now is everything was described as housing development site, housing development. It would just be development site, or there might be a more artful name, but yes, you would make definition. I would have to make a lot of changes to switch to a.
I guess I'd remind us, this is an evolving conversation. And it's the beginning of getting a program all ready to
Mhm.
perfect as it makes its way through the legislative process. So I think we've gotten to this.
Is it,
I think we've gotten this well, at least.
I just want me
A
to
good start.
understand, we have to do well on the
Yeah.
floor.
Absolutely.
Did we discuss multiple municipalities being involved or multiple developers?
We didn't really discuss that, but I don't think there's anything to prohibit if you had multiple parties under that agreement. I mean, people have the option to avail themselves of financing for the developer. They have the option, so you could structure it. Folks have the contractual flexibility to structure that if they need multiple.
Does that come up, Alex?
Well, I'm trying to think about that. I think what John's saying makes sense to me, that if an application came to Betsy and it was multiple municipalities, I think that would be fine.
Okay.
And the rest of it's flexible enough for that to.
This is kind of, I was envisioning multiple developers, which is, if we're
Yeah.
talking multiple municipalities, I would probably have to think more about how that would work, but I would just note that the actual site is only going to fall within one particular
Yeah,
municipality.
110.
It
But the
could be,
finance.
because if
Well-
it's a project, then it could just be multiple develop, but it's,
Although, so this is where I'm trying to understand, the site is gonna fall in one municipality, even if the infrastructure runs
You
between two.
Yeah, you could have a setup like that. There's space for geographic separation between infrastructure and the development site.
Do you feel that way, Alex?
I think, yeah, that does make sense to me. I hadn't
Okay.
thought about it, but that does make sense.
Okay.
Then I will add an and I will get out of the chair.
Any other questions?
Well, if David's listening and David, if you are listening and
David's right there.
and you heard any of my questions, do you have any like final thoughts on this being broad enough for, large or multi-municipality sites that are,
So regarding multiple municipalities, I'm skeptical that will ever occur. I suppose in theory it could, but I don't think it's a major consideration, that things will Well,
fine. South Burlington's wastewater capacity, like,
Sure.
How does
But
that-
absolutely, I agree with what John Gray said a moment ago, that there's nothing in here that would preclude
Okay.
this helping pay for the infrastructure that's physically in another municipality. So I'm comfortable with that as far as that goes. I will say that given that I'm still, and I know it may be too late for me to influence this further at this today, but I will just, for the record, say that I continue to be uncomfortable about putting the affordability requirements in. I think it adds complication and lowers potential revenue that then may lower the actual production of housing, which is what we're trying to achieve here. But I'll also add that there is the question, and two things. One is, first, conventional TIF, the larger general TIF, doesn't have such affordable housing requirements. This is simply for growth in development. And it's
if you have, I think in the 5 potential criteria in the Big TIF program, you have to meet 3 of 5 of them, and the one that's housing is specific to affordable housing.
it is.
You can do something else, but
You can do something else.
But that,
But putting this in this way doesn't give you the option to do something else.
we
And
can do
so
something else like not affordable housing, or something else like something else entirely than housing.
So, Madam Chair, if I could
Yeah.
ask David a question, as I'm understanding the way the committee requested and as John drafted, just to check the box, you would just need to have a portion. So
Mhm.
a home that is at 150 AMI, just for argument's
Right,
sake.
right.
And then the rest of them could be, you do not have to then check the envelope for the rest of them, and you could do anything with the rest of the project.
Which that will change moving forward to other committees, probably for some level of additional oversight, but our committee does have to start somewhere that we do not necessarily believe that projects at 400% of AMI for housing are a good use of the education fund dollars that will be borrowed for this.
Well, I understand that, and I'm a huge supporter of affordable housing. Don't get me wrong. I will simply remind you that the vast majority of these projects wouldn't exist otherwise. And so it's not like you're taking money from the ed fund. But let's put that discussion aside. That's a much more in-depth
any of us
discussion.
agree we're not taking money from the.
You can have that conversation.
But well, that's a different discussion. But let me just say that the other issue is timing. That is, many of the programs you've adopted in recent years, the legislature has adopted, have time limits that say, okay, if you're going to use these funds, you need to ensure the affordability for 15 years or something like that. And so I do think that right now, as drafted, this has no such time limit. It says it's affordable. So does that mean affordable on day one, in year one, or does that mean affordable in perpetuity? You haven't defined that. So I'll just simply point that out.
I was wondering if Chad was here because that's why I would have just referenced the middle income sections, because they build in for rental and for ownership, well, not ownership, but for rental, a certain number of years that it has to remain at that level. It was more than just the 150, all that was borrowed from there was the 150 cap, which isn't all that language is or was, and that language evolves every year we come back and look at the program. So I would rather tie it to a statute that is how VHFA in an ongoing way looks at their commitment to missing middle investment. Alex, am I making sense?
It does make sense. I'm wary of tying a bigger tool to a specific program, but I do understand what you're saying makes sense.
John, you have a thought.
It's okay. I would just say, that'll make sense to me. I think you guys have the concept in the draft, and
Yeah.
that is
Well, David Points still stands for those who
Yeah.
worry about things becoming market rate the next day, which is that we usually put safeguards in.
I would add this, we're going to have some amendments to our housing bill. I would add this as something we could consider amending the timeframe.
Sounds good.
Is that okay to people?
Well, I would rather just I would rather create an area where we continue to reference the middle income housing programs, because I think they're here to stay, but they will continually evolve in terms of what we mean by affordable to.
Right. I think, John, how would we do that in this draft?
I don't know. I mean, I talked with Chad to craft this language, so this was worked in agreement with GHFA. But if you guys want to revisit this, we can do
add
that.
it on an
I think
amendment
you're
of the
just trying to
timeframe
cut
piece.
this out.
I know, I'm just saying that it's not what you had suggested, that is what I want to do, because it's an evolving area of the law. I don't want to just add in another piece of the missing middle to this section. I want to reference another kind of statute.
I understand the request. Yeah. I
David,
think we're
May I suggest that because you've got a time frame here for crossover, that one way of addressing this might be to simply insert a simple phrase that says for not less than pick a period of time, 10 years or whatever, that then gets the concept in there that to Madam Chair, that your point can then be amended and for Senator Ram Hinsdale could be amended to refer, because that's more complicated type of language, to refer to what I'm hearing John Gray say is to refer to those other existing statutes. But if you put in the concept, then you've put forward what you're interested in, and it gives the opportunity to refer to that to be amended later. But the concept's there.
I can add a clause to that effect if you guys want that.
okay, I think that would at least get us forward.
I'm not trying to be picky, but why I don't like that is because the other language doesn't just say after 10 years, it can be whatever. It's a specific scale of rent that you can increase it by. It's not just 10 years of this level and then whatever. So if people want a placeholder, fine. That's not my interest. It's a placeholder of that nature.
So do you guys want me to make a change, or do you want to just do it as this?
I'd like to do an amendment later, if that's.
I think we need an amendment that is well thought out on this, that includes everything that we want to include.
I'm going to leave Cameron to deal with them for that.
Okay, right. So we'll have an amendment in section 16.
So yes.
Are you asking list council to keep track of all of these amendments? Because I'm feeling really like I've got out of sorts about all of it.
I'm fine.
I just don't want us to like forget.
Excuse me.
We're not forgetting anything. I'm right on it. Okay, Cameron.
Me, Heidi, are we still using the same link from this morning?
Yeah,
Yes, we are. I see you.
Okay. Good afternoon. Feel like I was here just moments ago. For the record, Cameron Wood, Office of Legislative Counsel. We are looking at draft 4.1 for your committee bill. As a quick reminder, we made very minor, at least for me, minor drafting amendments. I would just walk through this, very quickly. We've added a subject, we've added a statement of purpose, which is the purview of our office to make sure it's accurate reflection of the bill. So moving to page 2 is where we get to, the substance of each section. I'm not going to walk through each section at this point unless their
I think we
desire to.
pretty much signed off on everything, right?
Right, so most of what we did was remove, right? We removed the section 6 related to the state treasurer's office pilot program for now, for potential amendment. We have removed section 11, which was the by right for manufactured and modular housing
Right.
in municipalities. We've removed that for now. We have removed section 23, which was the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, $250,000 for the manufactured, work. We removed those 3 sections. I can skip very quickly down to the
Section 16, we are gonna add
and that has already been done and sent along. I did not pull it up here. This is
Okay, right.
4.1. We have already moved to a 5.1 to add the word and there. Let's see here in the housing and public accommodation section. So this is now section 6, which is on the bottom of page 16, top of page 17. You can see in the definition of harass, I've removed the reference to immigration status. We have kept immigration status in the public accommodations section. But then when we get to what is now section 8, we've removed immigration status into the protections for all of these provisions. We have kept the subsection D kind of catch-all protection in the event that, and required by federal law, verification of immigration status shall not constitute a violation. We have kept that language. I believe that it
It's
is
right on
appropriate
page 21.
even though you've removed immigration status, because
Right.
citizenship is there. I think it's probably appropriate to just keep that as protection,
Right.
kind of adjust in
But
case.
everywhere else in section 9 or
The
the
words,
next section.
the immigration status protection was removed, just.
And I just want to say for the record, there was another request about social security, not using social security numbers in all instances where we are not agreeing as the committee to insert that. So that's something that they could advocate for elsewhere, but that was important to them as part of this.
And we have so then we have added all of the provisions from John, and I think that's actually further down in the brownfield section right now. So I'll just highlight that we reduced brownfield funding down to 4 million, and that is here in section 15 at the bottom of page 27. So the sum is now 4. And then here is where tax increment financing reader heading, so page 28. So this next 2 sections, section 16 and 17, is where we have the provisions that, you all have been discussing and John has been working on. The and has been added in a 5.1. It's available on your website.
Can you just show me the B for what affordable housing means? Rental housing for which, okay, so it's the same definition.
Right.
It's just for. Can you go back up to A? Sorry, rental housing or what?
The owner occupied.
Owner occupied housing for which. Okay. I need just.
And then the other change that I made, apologies for the scroll.
So there is one, I hate to be the one to identify it, but I'm going to. We had talked, and I'm sorry, John isn't still here, but I'm noticing as we look through this, the project criterion, we had included tier 2, and I'm happy to do that as an amendment on page 36, line 7. I thought we'd added in tier.
An area designated tier 2. It says tier 2.
Made it a separate bullet, but okay. It is, it appears to be in a sub.
Yes, there it is, sorry.
And then
Thank you very
B
much.
is interim exemption.
Yeah,
And that's
thank you.
balance.
That's how we handle, it, right? Thank you. Thank you. Now, I just, I was like, focus.
Good.
The other change is going to be on page 48. This was, as we discussed when my colleague, Mr. Keaton, was in the chair. This is on line 11. So it is the property has been rehabilitated or improved using a grant or loan from the Vermont Housing Improvement Program. They do have both. So that was a good recommendation from the commissioner. Those are the changes that we have.
comments?
Can we move this and then spend 5 minutes on my proposal so that we can line up testimony?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay.
Absolutely.
Then
So,
I'll move this.
I would, are you moving this?
Yes.
Okay,
But out at one, gotta be out at one.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
25
Same.
dash 041. And it will be draft 5.1.
5.1.
It's on the website now.
Thank you. Oh, Heidi, good word. A whiz. She is a whiz. And so are you, Cameron, and so is John, even though he's on this. Okay,
And so we're all off my belt.
okay, suck up all the way. Here we go. So you moved it, right, Keisha?
Mhm.
Okay, clerk, would you be kind enough to call the roll?
Sure. Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Chittister. Yes. Senator Robinson.
Yeah.
Senator Reeds, no. And I'm specific to the project-based tip not being, it should be in the word. And anyway, that's why Senator Clarkson,
I'm a little
on
lost.
section 16, broadened it to the point where it's practically. I thought I should look up Troy. Senator Clarkson.
Yes. So
One, two.
thank you. Thank you, committee. Thank you for your hard work on this. Let's pivot because we have a short time.
Can I ask, are you going to want to work on that in the next 2
Yeah,
weeks?
could we work on that?
or no?
Sure. Next week.
Okay, because I feel like,
Pretty consistent. Sure.
okay,
Okay,
that's what I was
I
like
just
really trying to get at.
not the and in the title, but
So the project-based tips should be.
Economic development or housing. I agreed, and I was trying to get us.
see, I think it's both. But anyway, well, further discussion.
Too late to debate.
Too late to debate. We are moving forward, and I think this is going to be a combination of reporters because we have different sections that different people I think are keen on being lead reporter. Keisha, would you be interested in being lead reporter? And I'm happy to help you, and I'm hoping a bunch of us would be.
Sure,
Which
I also have a lot of experience saying there's an amendment and then a further amendment. And then you'll see the report of this other committee. So yeah, I'm happy to do that.
I'm happy to have you continue your work, a fine work on our housing.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to help on sections you think I would
Oh,
help.
lovely. I mean, I guess, yeah, if that means I also figure out what everybody else reports, I can collaborate with you on that.
We'd love that.
Probably be good for someone from finance to do the TIF.
I think Randy or
both.
Thomas could do the tip. It would be great. Okay, thank you, Cameron.
Yeah.
Let's turn to Keisha's, which we got,
Very quickly, with 7 minutes.
yeah, we got handed, this draft yesterday afternoon. And, if you put it up, because it's in my pile, but I have to find it. So, why don't you put it up?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I will give a brief disclaimer that some of these sections are the purview of my colleagues, so I can give at least an acknowledgement of what it is. But if you have detailed questions as this moves forward, for example, this section 1, this is typically Damien's area. He drafted this language. Damien covers, residential fire safety code, et cetera, for our office. So this came from Damien. But I would just comment that Section 1 is going to require the Division of Fire Safety to amend the Building and Fire Safety Code by July 1 of 2026 to permit all multi-story, multi-unit residential dwellings that are equipped with a fire sprinkler system to have a single exit stairwell, and to permit newly installed elevators in residential buildings that are 3 or more stories in height above or below grade level to have an elevator cab of any size that meets or exceeds the minimum dimensional requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act. You all required them to review certain aspects of their code in, I believe it was last year. And they came back with a report identifying that they would look at these things via rulemaking. So you may want to have them in to discuss what they found in their report and their reaction to this. I'm gonna keep moving, so I know you're short on time. Okay, section 2. What this would do is this is associated with the State Historic Preservation Office. This was kind of drafted in collaboration between me and Ellen, but this would require, or as you can see, it would amend the statutory authority of the State Historic Preservation Officer to say that rules adopted under their authority shall not require changes to a proposed project at a historic site if the project does not affect the exterior envelope of the building, and the changes would result in a reduction in the number of residential units available for a given project, or an increase in the cost of the project greater than 10% of the overall project costs. Here's where I start to stray out of my lane a little bit, and I would defer to Ellen. My understanding is when there are, projects that are, rehabilitating or changing historic sites as part of the, I'll say, Act 250 process, these, the Historic Preservation Office comes in, reviews it. They can make recommendations to the project developer, and if the office feels that the changes have an adverse effect on the building, and if
The historic nature of the building.
correct. And if the developer, doesn't mitigate those adverse effects to the satisfaction of the office, they can then provide their recommendations to the district commission to include the recommendations in the permit. That's my understanding of how the process works. So this would limit their ability to make those recommendations if it's causing a reduction in the number of units or an increase in the project costs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
The
Writing
section,
witnesses down as we go.
section 3 is a requirement to have the Department of Housing and Community Development to issue a report on how to adopt minimal design standards for construction that would be used to reduce municipal permit processing. And my understanding is the thought here is have a minimal design standard such that if it's being used to develop housing, then it's going to reduce the barriers that are in place for
Our
for that
continued
project.
work on reducing barriers.
Statewide voluntary form-based code, which Maine does right now.
So this would be an area of Ellen's out in mind as you move forward. Okay.
Other areas we're working on statewide building codes.
Yeah, and there is currently a study group, if you will, that is looking at that.
There are different types of codes. So.
Yeah.
There are
David.
two other sections. This one is a section that would be adding into the Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act. So section 27A,
This is
and
your-
it would prohibit common interest communities from limiting unit owners from renting or leasing units for residential purposes. It will not apply to short-term rentals as it's drafted. I have to be careful here, and we'll probably need discussion. I have a notwithstanding section here. So this provision will only apply to new common interest communities that are created after December 31, 2025. Because if you make this retroactive, you start to impact
Oh, yeah,
common laws
you can't do that.
issues. And
Right.
you can, but it comes with certain constitutional analysis that you need to be aware of in case of challenge, et cetera.
And there is an interest in allowing someone in one of these communities to do weatherization as well, which can be prohibited. And that's an interest of Senator Watson. So I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just hadn't had a chance to draft that up.
David has to go in a minute. So the next one actually is section 5.
Oh, apologies there, drafty. This has not been edited, so
No,
apologies.
okay.
That's a drafting error on my part. This would, add $1 million to Dale to grant out to individuals to make a modification or procurement for the residential dwelling to accommodate their disability. There was discussion about making that a loan fund or a low interest revolving loan fund. In the interest of time for Senator Ron Hinsdale to be able to share this, I drafted it as a pilot grant program, but
And this is to be managed through Alex's office.
There's an existing fund at Opportunities Credit Union, but we can't grant directly to Opportunities Credit Union. So we would try to steer this through an agency that could then pass it through to Opportunities Credit Union, where that fund is very highly utilized and being depleted. We can hear more about that.
But this is your ADUs for the development. So thank you, Thomas. Thank you, David.
Well, we're both in the same committee. Do you need us to?
No, I think
Okay.
we just need
Yeah,
to
yeah.
one weekend, and we need to get witnesses.
Yes.
I have Laura and Ben Doyle, Laura who runs our.
Okay, perfect. Why don't you tell them I'll be 2 minutes late? Okay.
Anyway, I
have a
think
wonderful week.
we're
Done.
done. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.